Someone looked at what you were building and told you it was not good enough. Or they laughed. Or they went quiet in a way that said everything. Or they gave you the kind of advice that was really just their doubt wearing the costume of concern. And some part of you, even if you never admitted it, let them in. You made their ceiling your floor. What if I told you that everything they said about you was not about you at all? There is a mechanism in the human mind so consistent, so predictable, that once you understand it, you will never hear criticism the same way again. Not because you will become arrogant, not because all criticism is wrong, but because you will finally be able to separate two things that most people confuse their entire lives: what someone says about you, and what that statement actually reveals about them. Alfred Adler, the Viennese psychologist who split from Freud to build his own school of thought, spent his life studying the hidden engine beneath human behavior. He called it the inferiority complex. And his insight into what drives people to diminish others is still, a century later, the most precise explanation we have. Alfred Adler writes, "The greater the feeling of inferiority that has been experienced, the more powerful is the urge to conquer, and the more violent the emotional agitation." The more violent the emotional agitation. In other words, the louder someone tries to make you small, the larger you already appear to them. A young sculptor shows her first real piece to a group of classmates. One of them, the loudest, the most outwardly confident, looks at it for a long moment, then says, "It is technically fine, but there is nothing original here." The room absorbs the verdict. She carries it for years. She makes smaller pieces, safer pieces, pieces that cannot be criticized because they do not dare to say anything. What nobody in that room knew, what she did not know, is that the classmate who spoke had not made anything in 6 months. Not because he lacked talent, because he was terrified of what would happen if he tried, and it turned out he was ordinary. Her work had shown him exactly that fear, reflected it back, and he did what threatened people always do. He tried to put out the light that was showing him his own darkness. Freud named the mechanism in 1894. He called it projection, the unconscious process by which a person attributes their own unacceptable feelings, inadequacy, fear, desire, shame, onto someone else. It is not deliberate. It is not even conscious. It is the psyche's most automated defense. Take what I cannot bear to see in myself and place it outside, where I can attack it safely. But René Girard, the French philosopher and literary theorist, one of the most original thinkers of the 20th century, went deeper. He built an entire theory of human desire around a single disturbing observation. We do not know what to want, so we watch others, and we want what they want. Man is the creature who does not know what to desire, and he turns to others in order to make up his mind. We desire what others desire because we imitate their desires. Girard called this mimetic desire, and its dark consequence is this: the person whose desire you are imitating, the person who has what you want, who is becoming what you secretly wish you were, becomes the target of an anger you cannot fully explain even to yourself. You do not hate them. You hate the distance between who they are and who you have not yet dared to become. Envy does not say, "I wish I had that." It says, "You should not have that either." If this is changing how you read the people around you, subscribe. Every week, a psychological truth most people live their whole lives without seeing. Hit the button. Stay for the part that will change the most. Erich Fromm, the German-American psychologist who spent his life studying what love and its opposites actually look like in human behavior, identified what he called the necrophilous character, not in the clinical sense, but in the philosophical one. A person oriented not toward life, growth, and creation, but toward control, stagnation, and the suppression of whatever is alive and moving in others. Erich Fromm writes, "The person who is not capable of creating wants to destroy. Destructiveness is the outlet of unlived life. Destructiveness is the outlet of unlived life. The criticism that was aimed at you was not about your work. It was about their unlived life, leaking out through the only channel it had available." And Oscar Wilde, who was punished by an entire society for being too visible, too original, too undisguised, said it with the precision that only comes from having survived it. It is absurd to divide people into good and bad. People are either charming or tedious. What he meant, beneath the wit, is that the people who try to reduce you are not evil. They are tedious in the most tragic sense. trapped in a version of themselves they never had the courage to question. Tool 1. The two-question filter. When criticism lands, before you absorb it, run it through two questions. First, does this person have a result I genuinely respect? Second, is this critique based on specific evidence or on feeling? If both answers are no, the critique is projection. File it as data about them. Do not carry it as verdict about you. A judgment from someone who has not built what you are building is not a judgment. It is a confession. Tool 2. The self-projection audit. Here is the uncomfortable part. The same mechanism that drives others to project onto you operates inside you. Notice who you criticize most instinctively, not in public, in your own mind, in that first unfiltered reaction. That reaction is your most honest map of your own unmet desires. What you cannot tolerate in others is almost always something you have not yet resolved in yourself. Your criticism of others is the autobiography you never meant to write. The sculptor made smaller pieces for 3 years. Then one day, she could not explain why, she made the largest thing she had ever attempted. It was imperfect. It was exposed. It said something unmistakably her, and the same classmate who had diminished her years before looked at it across the room at the opening and said nothing. Because there was nothing left to say. The work had not changed. Her willingness to be visible had. And that is the only thing that ever actually changes. Not the work, not the talent, not the criticism. Your willingness to remain visible in the face of people whose survival depends on you disappearing. Whose voice have you been carrying as if it were a verdict? And what would you create if you finally understood it was a confession? Leave your answer in the comments. Or don't. But sit with the question. Because the answer will tell you exactly whose shadow you have been living in, and whose light you have been dimming to make them comfortable. If something in this gave you back something that was taken, subscribe. Every week, a conversation like this one, deeper each time. Next video is already written, and it will reach somewhere this one did not.